If you're into supernatural horror stories that mess with things we can't explain, stick around, because what you're about to hear involves mysterious presences, unsettling apparitions, and signs that might not just be coincidences. Like in the story you're about to see, where a simple visit to a beach house reveals something watching and reacting, even when nobody else seems to notice. But before we start the story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories, and let me know in the comments which city or country you're watching from. On my first night in that quiet seaside town, I jolted awake in a cold sweat, certain someone was watching me through the window. But there was no one there, just the muffled crash of waves in the distance and the rustle of leaves tapping against the glass. The house I'd rented was simple, cozy, tucked away near the beach in a more isolated stretch of town. That's why I'd moved here, to escape the chaos, to breathe, to walk barefoot in the sand, to sleep without the city's hum still buzzing in my skull. A few days after settling in, I decided to visit an old couple I knew who'd lived there much longer. They'd bought an old place called Blackthorn Manor, a house everyone in the area seemed to recognize. They told me it was one of those grand Georgian homes. 3 stories, tall windows, a stone courtyard that groaned underfoot. The thick walls were smothered in ivy, and the iron gate always creaked when it swung open. There was something eerie about it, the kind of place that felt like it was holding its breath, waiting to tell you its secrets. They welcomed me with wine and easy conversation. Mrs. Beatrice Holloway, elegant, sharp-tongued, showed me the living room, where a cold fireplace sat beneath stacks of books on every surface. Her husband Ernest, quieter, fiddled with papers in his study. We spent hours talking, laughing over old stories, reminiscing, finding humor in nothing. By the time I stood to leave, the late afternoon light was spilling through the tall windows, painting the walls in warm, golden streaks. That's when I glanced up, without meaning to, toward one of the second-floor windows. There was someone there, a woman, motionless, staring out. Long, dark hair loose around her shoulders. She wore a tattered white nightgown, the fabric torn at the shoulder. The strangest part? She was slowly brushing her hair, as if she didn't even notice us below. I froze, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. She looked like Mrs. Holloway, but not quite. I called out, "Mrs. Holloway, there's someone upstairs." She set her book down, frowning. "Upstairs, what do you mean?" "In the second-floor window, a woman, brushing her hair." "But I'm right here with you." "I know, but..." She stood abruptly, smoothing her blouse, and climbed the stairs faster than I'd expected from someone her age. I stayed rooted in place, wondering if I'd imagined it. When she came back down, she said the room was empty, the door locked. I asked if anyone else lived there. A relative, maybe. She shook her head. "Just me and Ernest. And the cleaning girl. But she only comes in the mornings." I left with that image burned into my mind. The woman in the window, the slow drag of the brush through her hair, the hollow look in her eyes. I tried to dismiss it. Light playing tricks, exhaustion, my imagination. But the feeling of something in that house was too strong to ignore. It was like the place recognized me, or like it had been waiting. The next day, I brought a friend with me. I needed to know if she saw it too. When we arrived, the sun was still high, but the sky had that heavy, shifting quality of a storm coming. Blackthorn Manor's entrance loomed even larger in the late afternoon light, long shadows stretching across the stone courtyard. We headed straight for the back, and instinctively I looked up at the same second-floor window. She was there, exactly as before. Same stance, same white gown, the same mechanical motion of the brush through her hair. But this time, she was smiling. Just slightly, almost imperceptibly, but it sent a chill down my spine. "You seeing this?" I asked. "Who the hell is that?" my friend whispered, stepping back. "She's looking right at us." "That's what I'm telling you. She looks like Mrs. Holloway." "But you said she's always in the living room." "Yeah." We went inside. Mrs. Holloway greeted us like nothing was wrong, sitting in her usual spot, reading. When I told her what we'd seen, her face went pale. For the first time, she didn't have an immediate answer. She stood slowly, adjusted her hair, and made her way to the stairs. This time, she took longer to come back down. "No one's up there," she said, breathless, and the window was locked. I pressed her, asked to go up together. She hesitated but finally agreed. When we opened the door, the room was dark, cold, the window completely shut, as if no one had touched it. But I knew it had been open. We both saw it. We went back downstairs in silence. The air in the room was thick with tension. We returned to the courtyard, looking up again. She was still there, watching us. But this time, when our eyes met, she took 2 steps back, gripped the window with both hands, and slammed it shut. The sound echoed like a warning. Mrs. Holloway collapsed right there on the spot. My friend rushed to help her. I just stood there, staring at the empty window, feeling like something terrible had just been unleashed. A dark energy hung in the air, heavy, suffocating. And even though I didn't understand what was happening, I knew this house held more than old walls and dusty furniture. It held a secret that didn't want to be found. We revived Mrs. Holloway with a damp cloth and sugared water. She was trembling, her eyes distant like she was trapped in a memory she couldn't escape. We tried to get answers out of her, but all she could whisper was, "She wasn't supposed to come back. She wasn't." That night I lay awake for hours, turning it all over in my mind. The figure, the room, the locked window, Mrs. Holloway's collapse. The feeling of being watched followed me, even far from the house. My friend tried to convince me it was just a coincidence, maybe an old resident, some kind of mass hysteria. But I couldn't shake it. Something was wrong, something that didn't make sense. And the worst part? It felt like it was getting closer to me. 2 days later, I went back to Blackthorn Manor, alone. Mrs. Holloway met me with a strange look, not surprise, but resignation, like she'd known I'd return. I told her I needed to see the room again. She hesitated, then handed me the key without a word. I climbed slowly, each step groaning under my weight. When I opened the door, a cold draft hit me, even though the window was shut. The bed was untouched, but in the corner sat an old wooden chair with a curved back. On it, a hairbrush, dark wood, with long, dark strands still caught in the bristles. I didn't want to touch it, but I reached out anyway. The moment my fingers neared it, the chair shifted. Just slightly, but enough to make me jerk back. That wasn't the wind. That wasn't normal. That same night, I wrote a note. I don't know why. It just felt right. I took a piece of paper, wrote in black ink, "If you need to say something, say it. We don't mean you harm." I folded it and left it on the windowsill of that room beside an apple. I don't know. I thought maybe it would work like an offering. Ridiculous maybe, but in the moment it made sense. I closed the door and went downstairs. No one mentioned it over dinner. The next morning I returned to the room. The note was still there, untouched, but the apple had been crushed, thrown to the floor like it had been hurled in anger. The chair was knocked sideways. The brush lay on the floorboards, hair tangled in the bristles, as if someone had stepped on it. And the strangest thing of all, the bed. The mattress was depressed, clearly as if someone had been lying there, not resting, but watching, waiting. I stood paralyzed. The air in the room was thick, oppressive, like something was pressing in on me. I forced myself to the bed, heart pounding, and touched the sheet. It was warm. And I swear I heard a faint breath right by my ear. I spun around, but there was nothing. Just the heavy, empty silence, like the room had swallowed time itself. I stumbled downstairs. Mrs. Holloway looked at me and just shook her head. She didn't ask, didn't explain. All she said was, "You opened the door that should have stayed shut." A week later, I started getting sick. First, a low fever, then body aches, dizziness. No doctor could explain it. Tests came back normal, diet was fine, everything was fine. Except for the way I'd wake up every night at the same time, 3:15 a.m., with the same dream. The faceless woman at the window staring. Only now she wasn't brushing her hair anymore, she was pointing at me. 2 years of this, 2 years of fever, chills, the constant sense of being watched. I moved houses, towns, states. It didn't matter. That thing followed me. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther away, but never truly gone. It would appear in the corner of a mirror, in the static of a turned-off TV, in the dull drip of water in the shower when I was alone. To this day, I don't know who she was, if she was Mrs. Holloway from another time, or some memory of the house that refused to fade. All I know is that experience changed me in a way no one else understands. Some people say seeing a ghost is all in your head, but it wasn't just seeing, it was feeling. It was living with it, carrying that energy inside you like a crack that never heals. And sometimes, when everything's too quiet, I still hear the sound of a brush slowly dragging through hair that shouldn't be there anymore. Creepy, right? What did you think of the story? On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give it? Share your opinion in the comments. It's terrifying to think that something could cross into our reality just to watch you, especially when you know no one should be there. The next story brings that fear even closer to home, because this time, the haunting climbs the stairs while you're all alone. All I wanted was to eat my sandwich and watch cartoons in peace, but the house had different ideas. My parents had taken my older sister out for groceries, leaving me home alone for the first time. 13 years old, convinced I was ready to hold down the fort for a few hours. We lived in an old 2-story house in a quiet Canadian town, where the biggest danger, up until then, had been slipping on the icy sidewalk. Never once did I think the real threat was inside. The weirdness started with a dull thud, like something heavy had hit the floor upstairs. I set my plate down on the couch and froze, listening. The TV was still on, but my eyes were locked on the staircase leading up to the second floor. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, heavy. One deliberate step at a time, like someone climbing toward the hallway bathroom. My blood turned to ice. I called out, "Hello?" But whatever it was, kept coming. No hesitation. Each step louder, closer. The kind of sound you feel in your chest, not just here. Every instinct screamed at me to run outside, but my legs wouldn't move. Then suddenly, the steps stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. I thought it was over, until I heard the doorknob to my parents' bedroom turn. Then a heavy thud, like the door had been shoved hard from the inside. I bolted for the basement, colder, but somehow safer. I didn't come back up until I heard the family car pull into the driveway. Even then, I only went upstairs after everyone else was inside. I didn't say a word. I knew no one would believe me. That wasn't the last time. A few days later, I was watching TV again. My dog sprawled out beside me. Out of nowhere, the kitchen cabinet started slamming. A sharp, rhythmic bang like someone was yanking the doors open and shut in anger. I got up slowly, and the noise stopped. I walked into the kitchen. Everything was still. No open doors. But the dog, he was frozen at the top of the basement stairs, body rigid, ears pinned back. A low growl rumbled in his throat, but he wouldn't budge. I called him, tugged his collar, even tried pushing him forward. Nothing. Like he knew something was down there and he wasn't about to face it. After that, I started noticing the staircase more. Every time I climbed it, I swore someone was right behind me. Not just a feeling, physical, like a pair of eyes on my back, breathing down my neck, almost shoving me forward. I took those steps 2 at a time more than once, nearly tripping just to get away from it. Finally, I broke down and told my sister. She gave me this weird look and said, "I feel it too. Always have, especially when it's dark." Later that same day, my dad reluctantly joined the conversation. He admitted he'd felt it before but brushed it off as just in our heads. The way he said it, though, you could tell he didn't fully believe that. Then there was that night. I was lying in bed half asleep when the mattress started shaking. Not subtle, like someone was pounding on it from underneath or shoving it side to side. The bed frame creaked, the whole thing lurched. I bolted upright and screamed for my mom. She stumbled in, flipping on the light, half awake and confused. I told her what happened. She ran a hand over the mattress, muttered something about a nightmare, but I hadn't been asleep yet. That wasn't a dream. She tried to calm me down, but I could see it. She was unsettled, like she wanted to forget. After that, my sister started opening up too. She swore she'd heard whispers in her room right by her ear when she was alone. Once, she was sure she'd seen a shadow in the hallway, just standing outside the bathroom, watching her door. My mom admitted that once, she'd felt someone yank her blanket in the middle of the night. When she turned on the light, no one was there. But the blanket? It had been dragged halfway off the bed. By then, we all knew. This wasn't just a house anymore. There was something there, a heavy energy, a presence that fed on our fear. We didn't talk about it all the time, but the house breathed it, like living with an invisible roommate who hated being ignored. Some days, the lights flickered for no reason. Other days, the air felt thicker, colder, and that staircase feeling never went away. The only one who avoided the topic was my dad. But one day, it slipped out. We were in the kitchen, just the two of us, when he said, "Some things you don't understand, and it's better to leave them alone." He looked at me with this exhausted expression, like he'd seen more than he ever wanted to. I didn't push, but I got the message. He carried it too. After my mom passed, the house became unbearable. The silence was different, heavier. We tried to move on, but everything there reminded us of her. And whatever had been watching us, it got worse. I started having nightmares, seeing a figure standing in my doorway, smelling her old perfume in the air, even with all the windows shut. My sister started crashing at friends' places whenever she could. My dad buried himself in work, and me? I spent more nights at my best friend's house than my own. That's where the worst thing happened. The first night I slept over, I thought I'd finally get some peace. His house was bright, modern, nothing like ours. No creaky wooden stairs, no cabinets slamming on their own. But in the middle of the night, I woke up to this feeling, like someone had just sat down on the edge of my bed. I didn't see anything, but the mattress dipped. I rolled over slowly, and there it was, a clear indentation, like someone had been sitting there. The room was silent, but the air, heavy, just like home. I got up and stepped into the hallway. No sounds, no lights. But when I looked toward his staircase, I saw it. The same shadow. Tall. Still. Like it had followed me. Like it had been waiting. That's when I realized it wasn't the house, it was me. Or maybe it had never stayed there. Maybe it had always been with me. And even now, years later, after moving away, new house, new neighborhood, new city, there are still nights I hear footsteps on the stairs, still moments when my dog stiffens, staring at an empty corner, a growl building in his throat. And sometimes, deep in the night, I feel the bed shake, like she's still here. So bizarre. When fear settles inside your own house, even the silence starts to get under your skin. And sometimes, even with your whole family there, you still feel like you're not alone. Like in the story you're about to hear, where a simple visit to a father's house revealed that the problem had started long before. So when he started going on about footsteps in the hallway and lights turning on by themselves, I just laughed. Told him it was probably a loose wire, a rat in the attic, something like that. He didn't appreciate the joke. Said I'd get it once I spent a night there myself. It didn't take long for that to happen. Our dad was heading out of town and asked me to house sit for a few days. It's this big old house, the kind with its own smell, like aged wood and yellowed books. It's way out in the sticks with barely any neighbors around. I've always liked it there because it's quiet, peaceful, but this time, something felt off. The first night I noticed the living room lights were on when I went to bed. I know I'd turned them all off. I liked the place pitch black. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to grab some water and found the kitchen light on. My first thought, must have forgotten to flip the switch, no big deal. But the next night, same thing. The hallway light was on, and I knew I hadn't left it that way. I started getting annoyed, but I still tried to rationalize it. Maybe the switch was faulty. Maybe the motion sensor, which doesn't even exist in that house, had glitched out for some reason. Then the noises started upstairs. Not just the usual groans of an old house or the wind howling. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, like someone was pacing back and forth. At first I chalked it up to my imagination, but when I stood at the bottom of the stairs in the dark, heart pounding, I clearly heard something dragging across my dad's bedroom floor. I forced myself to go up, flashlight in hand, opening each door one by one. Nothing. No signs of anyone. Windows locked, everything in place. But that feeling like I was being watched wouldn't shake. The air felt thick, like something was lurking in the corners, waiting for me to turn my back. After that night, my brain wouldn't quit. Every sound in the house took on a new weight. The wind rattling the door sounded like whispers. The ice clinking in my glass made me jump. But the worst was when I heard something that made no sense. An 8-bit sound. You know, like old Nintendo game music from the 80s? Yeah. Faint, coming from upstairs. I thought I was losing it because there was nothing in that house that could make a noise like that. I stormed up there more pissed than scared, ready to find some device blaring, but there was nothing. No radio, no TV. I stood in the hallway, flashlight shaking, straining to hear it again. The second I reached the top, the sound cut off. Like someone had hit mute the moment I arrived. I didn't sleep that night, just sat on the couch with all the lights on, trying to convince myself there was a logical explanation. But the silence was heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. Every now and then I'd get that prickly feeling on the back of my neck, like someone was standing right behind me. I'd whip around, but there was never anything there. Then the rain started. Not just a drizzle, pouring, hammering the roof and windows, thunder rumbling in the distance. That's when I noticed the pattern, the activity, the noises, the footsteps. They all got worse when it rained, like the water was waking something up. I don't know if I was being paranoid, but that night with the storm raging outside and the sounds creeping around upstairs, I got the sense that something was moving in the house. Something not human. The next day I waited for the rain to let up before calling my dad. I didn't want to freak him out, but I couldn't hide the tension in my voice. I awkwardly asked if he'd ever noticed anything strange in that house. He went quiet for a second, then said, "So you're hearing it too, huh?" My stomach dropped. He told me that over the past few months he'd started noticing things. At first he thought it was just the house settling. Creaks, groans, the usual. But then came the footsteps, the old-school electronic music, exactly like what I'd heard. The lights flipping on by themselves. He figured it was the weather, boredom, his mind playing tricks. But after waking up one night to find his closet door wide open and every drawer dumped out, he started to think maybe he wasn't alone. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was relieved I wasn't crazy. The other part? Terrified that this was real. We'd never had this kind of conversation before. My dad's always been the practical type. Fixes everything with logic, tools, or a spreadsheet. Hearing him admit he'd felt a presence there, it messed with me in a way I can't explain. That night the rain came back. I just stared out the window waiting for something to happen. At 3 a.m., the staircase light flicked on by itself. I stood up slowly, heart slamming against my ribs. Every instinct screamed at me not to go up there, but I did anyway. Each step felt heavier than the last. At the top of the stairs, the sound came back. That same 8-bit music, but louder now, insistent. It seemed to be coming from my dad's room. I pushed the door open carefully, and the second it swung wide, the sound stopped dead. I stepped inside. Everything was normal. No devices, no speakers. But the air, it was thick like I wasn't supposed to be there. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it. 3 sharp knocks on the wall behind me. I spun around before I could think. Nothing. No marks, no cracks. Just cold plaster. But I swear something touched me. Something icy, like a finger of air trailing down my skin. I bolted out of that room and flew down the stairs without looking back. Halfway down, I felt it again. That sensation of being followed. I stopped dead, whirled around to the top of the stairs, and saw it. A shadow. Not a person. Just a silhouette standing in the dark. Tall, too thin. Like it had been cut out of the blackness itself. I blinked, and it was gone. I didn't run. I just froze there for a few seconds before stumbling back to the couch. The house stayed quiet the rest of the night, but I didn't sleep. I sat there, wrapped in a blanket, every light blazing, my whole body buzzing like I'd been hit with a live wire. Part of me still tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's exhaustion, stress, inherited anxiety from mom. But the other part, the part that spent hours staring into the dark, that part knew it wasn't just in my head. The next day when my dad got back, I left without saying much. Just told him to be careful. He nodded like he understood more than he let on. On the drive home, I kept replaying everything, the lights, the sounds, the shadow. It had left a mark on me, one I couldn't quite explain. I can't say I believe in ghosts. I still don't know what to think. But I sure as hell don't laugh at my brother's stories anymore. Some places hold things you don't see, but they're there, waiting for someone to notice. And in that house, something noticed me. Since that week, I haven't been the same. I double-check dark hallways. I go still when I hear rain pounding against the windows. And sometimes when it's too quiet, I can almost hear it. That faint 8-bit tune, starting up again in the back of my mind. Chilling. No matter how hard we try to explain it, some places carry an energy that's impossible to ignore. In the next story, a woman tries to start fresh in a new apartment, only to discover that not everything can be explained with logic, and that some presences simply refuse to leave. But before we get into the story, if you've made it this far, that means you're enjoying these stories. So hit the like button to let YouTube know you want more of this kind of content, and you won't miss any more horror stories. I was alone when I heard the hairdryer turn on, by itself, in the bathroom while I was sitting on the couch, remote in hand, TV off. That's when I knew whatever was happening in that apartment went way beyond stress or imagination. And the worst part? It was only the beginning. I'd moved to Charlotte in a rush after my dad died. I needed a fresh start, anything to escape the suffocating grief. I rented an apartment in an old but well-located building, and at first, the place seemed charming. Big windows, hardwood floors, all retro but with character. The kind of apartment that felt like it had a story. And oh, it did. The first few days, everything seemed normal, mostly. There was this weird unease, though, like the air itself was heavier. At night, even with the windows shut, I'd feel icy drafts slithering down the hallway. I chalked it up to the old building, bad insulation, leaky ducts, whatever. But then things got personal. That constant feeling of being watched. It wasn't paranoia. I'd feel eyes on me while cooking, or sitting on the couch, or brushing my teeth. I started avoiding walking around in just a towel or underwear, even locked inside alone. I'd shut doors behind me, as if that could stop whoever was looking. A performance of privacy just to keep my sanity. Then came the bathroom noises. First, dripping water, except the faucets were bone dry. Then sounds like someone opening drawers, tugging at a brush, dropping something in the sink. One night I clearly heard the click of a medicine cabinet mirror shutting. I bolted in there. Nothing, everything in place. Just a faint whiff of old perfume in the air, the kind grandmas used to wear. As if that wasn't enough, the dreams started. At first, muffled voices like people arguing in another room. Then I'd dream of arguing with a woman who refused to leave the apartment. She never shouted, just spoke with this quiet certainty, like she knew this was her space, not mine. And in the dream, I'd beg her to go. When I woke up, my whole body ached like I'd spent the night fighting something invisible. Exhaustion, muscle pain, like I'd been wrestling a ghost. One night I jolted awake, gasping. The room was dark, but I knew someone was there. I couldn't see anything, but the mattress dipped deeper than usual, like another body was lying beside me. I didn't dare move, just closed my eyes and waited for dawn. The second I got up, I bought a new robe. Silly, maybe, but I needed an extra layer, not for warmth, but for protection. Something to help me stomach the idea of sharing my space with the unexplained. Then I had a different dream. I was in a soft-lit garden, and she was there too. But this time she wasn't arguing, just looking at me with this deep sadness, silent. When I tried to ask what she wanted, the dream cut off. I woke up feeling like I'd missed my chance to understand. The worst part came when I saw her. It was late afternoon, sunlight streaming through the windows, and I was lying on the couch when that chill ran down my spine again. I got up slowly and walked to the hallway. When I looked toward the bathroom, there she was, standing in front of the mirror. Big hair, dark lipstick, dressed straight out of the 80s. Shoulder pads, synthetic skirt, even those huge hoop earrings. She turned her head and looked right at me. I screamed, stumbled backward, and fell. When I looked again, she was gone. After that, I begged for a sign, out loud in the empty apartment. If you need something, show me. And I swear, the next day I found an old silver bell on top of the kitchen cabinet. One of those little handbells with a wooden handle. I'd never seen it before. And it was swaying on its own. No wind, no open windows. I started digging into the building's history, wondering if there was some technical explanation. Turns out, behind the complex, there was a power substation, and nearby, half hidden by trees, a massive cell tower. I spent hours researching electromagnetic fields, how they can cause that being watched feeling, dizziness, even hallucinations. But deep down, none of it really explained what was happening. I bought white sage from a little metaphysical shop in town and smudged the entire apartment. Walked through every room, the thick smoke swirling, quietly asking any negative energy to leave. But the feeling? It never fully vanished. Some days her presence was faint, others it was suffocating. That's when I started looking for a medium, called People Friends Recommended, scoured the internet, until I found a woman who worked right here in Charlotte. I told her everything, the noises, the dreams, the bell, the woman. She listened calmly, like she'd heard it all before, asked me to describe the building, the location, every detail of what I felt. At the end, she just said, "This presence doesn't want to hurt you, but you need to understand what she lost here." And that's when I knew this was far from over, because to understand what she lost, I'd have to figure out who she was, and what else those walls were hiding. So scary. What did you think of the story? On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give it? Leave your opinion in the comments. That night, I dreamed of him like we'd just seen each other yesterday. He was wearing that same blue jersey, the one he always had on when we'd meet up to watch games, smiling that crooked smile of his, eyes tired but alive. He was holding a small gift box, wrapped with a simple red ribbon. He handed it to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. I knew, right there in the dream, that it was supposed to be my best man's gift. And I knew, just as clearly, that he was dead. His name was Tommy. We'd known each other since high school in Guadalajara. Grew up together, shared secrets, road trips, stupid mistakes, and a million other things I've never told a soul. The kind of friendship you don't explain. You just have it. But addiction got him before life ever really took off. It started with harmless party escapes, then turned into a slide no one could stop. Not even him. He died last year. Overdose. I can still hear his mom's voice on the phone, muffled through sobs. When I hung up, I just stood there in the living room, phone in hand, feeling like time had drained out through some invisible crack in the floor. We'd promised he'd be my best man. And I remember like it was now, the last time I said it to him. "You've got my back till the end, right?" He laughed and said, "Always, man." After he was gone, things started getting weird. It started with the vet. I took my dog, Nacho, in for a routine checkup. The clinic was new, recommended by a coworker. The second I walked in, something felt off. Not scary, not uncomfortable, just familiar. Like I'd been there before, even though I knew I hadn't. The smell of the waiting room, the framed pictures on the walls, the way the receptionist talked. It all unsettled me, but I couldn't say why. On my way out, I struck up a conversation with the vet, a friendly older guy with a northern accent and sharp eyes. When I mentioned Nacho's name in the system, he paused for a second, then asked if I was related to a Tommy Rivers. I froze, said I was a friend. His expression shifted. He told me, a little awkwardly, that he used to take care of Tommy's family dog, a scruffy old mutt who died a month after Tommy did. The family never came to pick up the records, he mentioned, but lately someone's been getting automated texts about vaccinations and checkups, even though the dog's been gone for months. He thought it was a system glitch, but no one could fix it. And the number receiving the messages, the same one registered under Tommy's name. I forced a laugh, but left with the creeping feeling that something wasn't right. You know that sensation, like the universe is trying to tell you something, and you're pretending not to notice. Then things got even stranger when Tommy's dad called. We hadn't spoken since the funeral. He sounded calmer than I expected, but his voice dragged, like he was too tired to fight whatever he didn't understand. He asked if I'd dreamed about Tommy lately. That sent a chill down my spine. I hadn't told anyone about the dream. I said yes, and all he said was, "He's been showing up for me too," with the dog beside him. In the backyard, in the hallway. Sometimes I just hear footsteps. That's when the sleepless nights started. I got jumpy. Every noise made me whip my head around. Lights flickering, objects shifting when I wasn't looking. Even Nacho would bark at nothing. One night he stood at my bedroom door for over 10 minutes, not moving, just staring down the empty hallway, breathing hard. And the wedding. Well, the wedding was 3 months away. Every detail I planned made me think of Tommy. He was supposed to walk in with me, stand beside me at the altar, toast with me at the reception. But now there was just an empty space. I couldn't bring myself to replace him. Left his name on the program, his chair reserved. People didn't get it, but I couldn't do it any other way. Everyone said it was grief, that I was just missing him. But to me, it was more. There was something there, a presence that wouldn't let go. Not just memory, real. I felt it in my bones, like he was still trying to be part of it, like he still had something to give me. Then the second dream came, right before the wedding. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, half hidden in the dim light of a hallway that stretched longer than any real house could hold, was the dog. The same old mutt I remembered from visiting Tommy's place as a teenager. Skinny, one ear flopped, one eye cloudier than the other. But in that dream, they both looked at me with an expression that wasn't sadness. It was urgency, like they needed to deliver something before it was too late. Tommy held out the little box with the red ribbon again, but this time, he said something that jolted me awake. "Don't forget me when everything seems too perfect." I sat up in bed, cold sweat dripping, convinced he was still in the room. And for a few seconds, I swear I smelled it. That mix of cigarettes, cheap cologne, and something bitter I could never quite place. The room was dark, but the streetlight cast a faint glow on the chair in the corner, and I could have sworn it had turned. The week of the wedding, everything moved in slow motion. I was there, making decisions, meeting with the planner, talking to my fiancé, but my head was somewhere else. The empty chair, the box from the dream, the words he'd said, it all pounded in my skull. I didn't know if I was losing it or if grief was just swallowing me whole, even after all these months. At the rehearsal, I quietly asked them to leave his chair set up by the altar. I placed a small wooden plaque with his name carved into it. No one questioned it. I think people understood how much he meant to me, but no one knew that deep down, I believed he'd actually be there. The night before the ceremony, his dad called again. His voice was steadier this time, but heavy with a sadness that weighed on every word. He said he'd felt a strange energy in Tommy's old room that morning. The door, which always creaked when opened, had swung wide on its own, and the old dog, the one he'd buried in the backyard months ago, had appeared in his dream for the first time, running through the house like he used to. Then he said something that hit me like a punch to the gut. "I think Tommy just wants to make sure you don't erase him from the story." On the morning of the wedding, the sky was clear, but veiled in a thin mist over the city. The ceremony was outside, in a garden in Tlaquepaque, with string lights and soft music playing. Guests arrived, everything went as planned, and when it was my turn to walk in with the groomsmen, my heart raced. A cold wave crept up my back. I looked at Tommy's chair, still empty. But as I passed it, I felt it. a freezing gust just there. And the smell, again, that same scent from his car. The ceremony went off without a hitch. At one point during the vows, my voice cracked, but not from ordinary emotion. It was like something was pressing on my chest from the inside, a presence so strong I had to take a deep breath to keep from collapsing in front of everyone. When it was over, I walked over to the chair, ran my fingers along the back. The wood was ice cold, unnaturally cold. I crouched down and left a flower I'd kept in my pocket, the same kind we used to toss at each other's heads as stupid teenagers. And in that moment, I swear, the red ribbon, the same one from the dream, appeared on the ground right beside the chair, like someone had placed it there on purpose. I froze, looked around expecting someone to have seen. But everyone was busy, toasting, laughing, taking photos. The world kept turning, except right there in that little corner where Tommy's absence felt heavier than anyone's presence. In the days that followed, the dream stopped. The dog didn't appear, no more strange messages, no more smells. Like the ceremony had been the closing of something left unfinished, a silent goodbye, but a necessary one. Now, months later, I still leave an empty chair on the porch when I drink beer at night. And sometimes I talk out loud, like he's listening, because deep down, I know he is. And I know some things don't need explaining, just accepting. What I experienced with Tommy wasn't a haunting. It was a living memory, a message that some connections don't end with death, and no matter how much time passes, the feeling of being watched by someone you love never really fades. If you've made it this far, it's because you enjoy these kinds of stories that chill you in a deeper, more personal way. So subscribe to the channel to keep exploring these supernatural horror stories with me. Write the phrase "ghost friend" in the comments, so I'll know you stayed until the very end, and that these stories got to you too. Hit the like button if any of these experiences gave you chills or made you think twice before turning off the lights. Check out the video right here on the side. It continues with even more stories that leave you questioning what's real. Click it and keep going with me there.